The warning came on an ordinary Tuesday. Humanity's deep space sensors detected the massive ships materializing just beyond Mars' orbit. 7 crystalline vessels that seemed to bend light around their edges, each one larger than Earth's largest city. Within minutes, every screen on Earth lit up with the same message, broadcast in perfect English. To the species designation, human, you have been found in violation of Ancestral Decree 274B. Unauthorized technological advancement without proper registration and oversight. The Archean Collective hereby demands your immediate technological regression to pre-industrial status. You have 72 hours to comply. Resistance will result in immediate sanction. In the UN Emergency Council chamber, Admiral Helena Drake stood before the assembled leaders, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic display of the alien vessels. "They're not here to negotiate," she said firmly. "This is an extinction-level threat, but we might have one card left to play." The chamber erupted in whispers as she brought up another image, a sleek vessel unlike anything in Earth's known fleet. Its hull seemed to ripple like black water, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. "Project Shadow Dancer," Drake continued. "We've been developing it in secret for the past decade. A ship that breaks every rule of conventional physics, because it can rewrite those rules on the fly." The vessel's chief engineer, Dr. Kai Patel, stepped forward. His hand shook slightly as he manipulated the hologram, revealing the ship's inner workings. "The core technology is what we call quantum mimicry. The entire hull is made of programmable matter that can adapt to any energy signature it encounters. In theory, it could even copy and improve upon alien technology in real time." "In theory," someone asked from the shadows. "We haven't had a chance to test it against actual alien tech," Kai admitted. "But right now, it's the only advantage we have." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. They were about to bet humanity's survival on an untested ship with experimental technology. But looking at the crystalline destroyers looming in orbit, they knew conventional weapons would be useless. Admiral Drake's voice cut through the silence. "I've already chosen a crew." Captain Sarah Chen was top of her class in tactical innovation. She's been running simulations against theoretical alien encounters for years. If anyone can make this work, it's her. Thousands of kilometers above, Sarah Chen stood in the Shadow Dancer's bridge, studying the alien vessels through the ship's quantum sensors. Unlike traditional scanners, these could adapt their scanning methods on the fly, probing for weaknesses in ways the enemy might never expect. Their energy signatures are incredibly rigid, her science officer, Dr. Maya Rodriguez, reported. "It's like they're following a precise formula for everything. Weapon configurations, shield harmonics, even their formation positioning." Sarah nodded slowly, a plan already forming. In all her simulations, the most dangerous opponents were always the ones who couldn't adapt, those who relied on overwhelming force rather than tactical flexibility. "They expect us to either surrender or fight conventionally," she said. "So we'll do neither." The bridge crew worked in focused silence, preparing their experimental vessel for its first real combat. The quantum mimicry systems hummed to life, ready to analyze and adapt to whatever the aliens threw at them. They had no idea if it would work, but they were about to find out. "Send a message to the Archean fleet," Sarah ordered. "Tell them, humanity respectfully declines your offer. We suggest you reconsider your position." The response was immediate. A lance of crystalline energy that could have vaporized a conventional vessel. But as it struck the Shadow Dancer's hull, something remarkable happened. The programmable matter absorbed the energy, analyzed it, and began rewriting its own structure to generate a superior version of the same weapon. Dr. Rodriguez's eyes widened at her readings. "Captain, the ship, it's learning." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Archons had evolved their technology to perfection, but they'd stopped there, becoming trapped by their own rules and protocols. Humanity, on the other hand, had never stopped evolving. "Take us in," she ordered. "Let's show them why that was a mistake." The Shadow Dancer slipped between the massive crystalline ships like a ghost, its adaptive hull shifting and changing with each passing moment. The Archon's perfect formations and overwhelming firepower meant nothing if they couldn't hit their target. And with each failed attack, the human vessel grew stronger, learning, adapting, evolving. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin, and the enemy was about to learn a crucial lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent isn't the strongest, but the one who never stops changing. The Archon commander's crystalline face appeared on every screen in the Shadow Dancer's bridge, its multifaceted eyes pulsing with barely contained rage. Your resistance is unprecedented and illogical. No species has ever survived first contact protocols. Captain Chen watched the alien's frustration with clinical interest. Every word, every gesture revealed volumes about their psychology. Perhaps, she replied calmly, you should update your protocols. The transmission cut off as another barrage of energy weapons lit up space, but the Shadow Dancer was already gone, its quantum hull bending light around it like a technological mirage. The massive Archon ships turned ponderously, their weapon arrays searching for a target that refused to behave according to their combat algorithms. Status report, Sarah ordered, watching the tactical display as her ship slipped between the enemy vessels like a shark through coral. Dr. Rodriguez's fingers danced across her console. The quantum mimicry system has fully analyzed their primary weapon signatures. We can now generate identical energy patterns. But she paused, excitement creeping into her voice. We can modify the frequency. They won't be able to defend against their own weapons if they're slightly out of phase. Their formations are completely predictable, Lieutenant James Park added from Tactical. They maintain exact distances between ships, perfect firing angles. It's like they've never faced an enemy that survived long enough to make them adapt. Sarah nodded, pieces falling into place. The Archon's power came from perfection, but perfection was brittle. Evolution required imperfection, required change. Plot me a course through their blind spots. Let's see how they handle a ghost in their perfect machine. The Shadow Dancer's engines hummed silently as they executed their plan. The ship's adaptive hull had learned to bend not just light, but gravity itself, making their movements impossible to predict. They struck from impossible angles, using the Archon's own energy signatures against them, modified just enough to slip through their supposedly impenetrable shields. After each hit, they vanished again, leaving the mighty Archon fleet firing at shadows. Their perfect formations became a weakness, their ships so precisely positioned that they couldn't maneuver without risking collision with their allies. They're breaking formation, Park reported with satisfaction. First time in recorded history, according to their tactical databases we copied. But victory was far from assured. Even in disarray, the Archon ships wielded enough firepower to glass a planet. One direct hit could still end everything. Multiple energy spikes, Rodriguez called out. They're charging something massive. The tactical display lit up as all 7 Archon ships began channeling power into their central vessels. Space itself seemed to warp around them as they prepared to unleash their full might. They're going to fire blind, Sarah realized. Saturate the entire area. We can't dodge everything. She turned to her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt. Time to try something really stupid. Kai, can we absorb that much energy? The engineer's hands were already moving across his station. The quantum mimicry system was designed to analyze and adapt to enemy tech, not handle this kind of raw power. But he looked up, a glint in his eye. If we reverse the polarity of our hull's quantum state at the exact moment of impact, we either punch through dimensions or die spectacularly. Rodriguez finished. Status is overrated, Sarah said with a grim smile. All hands, brace for dimensional transit. Let's show them what happens when you corner something that never stopped evolving. The Archon weapon fired, a blast that could have cracked a moon. But at the precise moment of impact, the Shadow Dancer's hull shifted into a quantum state that should have been impossible. Space twisted, folded, and for a brief moment, the ship existed in multiple dimensions at once. When reality reasserted itself, the Shadow Dancer emerged behind the Archon fleet, its hull now crackling with energy it had absorbed and transformed. The quantum mimicry system had done more than survive. It had evolved, incorporating the massive energy burst into its own structure. New capabilities unlocked, Rodriguez reported, her voice filled with wonder. The hull, it's not just mimicking their technology anymore, it's improving it. Sarah leaned forward in her command chair, watching as the Archon ships slowly turned to face them. Send them a message. Your protocols need updating. Lesson 1. Never assume evolution has stopped. The battle was far from over, but humanity had proven something crucial. In a universe of perfect, unchanging power, adaptability might be the greatest weapon of all. The Shadow Dancer's bridge hummed with new energy as Dr. Rodriguez stared at her readings in disbelief. Captain, the quantum mimicry system, it's not just copying their technology anymore, it's predicting it. The holographic display showed streams of data flowing through the ship's adaptive hull, patterns emerging from chaos. Every encounter with the Archon weapons had taught their systems something new, and now those lessons were combining in unexpected ways. They're like living algorithms, Kai explained, his eyes reflecting the flowing data. Perfect, unchanging patterns, and our ship has learned to read them like a book. Sarah watched as another Archon formation appeared on their scanners. 12 crystalline ships moving in perfect synchronization. After their last encounter, the Archons had called in reinforcements, but they were still fighting by the same rulebook. Show me their blind spots, she ordered. The tactical display shifted, highlighting the precise gaps in the Archons' coverage, gaps that existed because their formations were too perfect, too rigidly maintained. Lieutenant Park's fingers danced across his console. They've adjusted their energy frequencies, trying to counter our last attack. But look at this. He highlighted a pattern in their shield modulations. They're cycling through exactly 144 frequencies in perfect sequence. If we time it right, we can predict exactly when they're weakest. Sarah finished. How's our new toy coming along, Kai? The engineer grinned. The dimensional shift drive is stable. Whatever their super weapon did to us, it knocked something loose in the laws of physics. We can now exist partially out of phase with normal space-time. Not for long, but long enough to be somewhere they don't expect. Sarah nodded. Dr. Rodriguez, are you ready with the probe? Maya held up a small device, hardly larger than her palm. The quantum mimic technology had been miniaturized, creating a probe that could act as a ghost ship, mimicking the Shadow Dancer's signature perfectly. Time to change the rules of engagement, Sarah announced. They expect us to either run or fight. So let's do both at once. The plan was audacious, perhaps insane, but those words were becoming humanity's greatest weapons. As the Archon fleet approached, the Shadow Dancer launched its probe, creating a perfect duplicate signature. Then, using their new dimensional shift drive, they slipped halfway out of normal space. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The Archon ships, bound by their rigid protocols, detected two identical targets, one visible, one moving in impossible ways through their sensor blind spots. Their perfect formation began to fracture as different ships followed different engagement protocols. They're splitting up, Park reported with satisfaction. Half the fleet is chasing our ghost. The others are trying to track our dimensional signature. Their command structure can't handle contradictory data. Sarah allowed herself a tight smile. Now for the real fun. Kai, power up the hybrid weapons. Let's show them what happens when you combine their technology with human creativity. The Shadow Dancer's new weapons were a testament to adaptive evolution. They combined the raw power of Archon energy weapons with humanity's talent for unpredictability. Beams of crystalline energy phased in and out of normal space, striking from angles that should have been impossible. Their shields are failing, Rodriguez reported. They can't adapt fast enough. Their defensive algorithms are trying to analyze our attacks, but we're not following any pattern they can recognize. The Archon fleet's response was devastating but predictable. Another attempt at their superweapon, charging all ships simultaneously. But this time, the Shadow Dancer was ready. "Execute attack pattern chaos," Sarah ordered. The ship's quantum hull split its signature into multiple ghost images, each one appearing to power up a different weapon system. The Archon fleet's targeting computers, designed for perfect efficiency, began to overload trying to calculate optimal responses to dozens of impossible threats. "They're firing," Park called out. But the Shadow Dancer was already moving, its dimensional drive carrying it through spaces that shouldn't exist. The massive energy burst from the Archon fleet passed through empty space, their perfect formation now working against them as ships caught each other in their firing solutions. As the energy dissipated, the Shadow Dancer reappeared inside their formation, its hybrid weapons already firing. Each shot struck with surgical precision, targeting the exact moments when each ship's shields cycled through their predictable patterns. "Message from the Archon command ship," Rodriguez announced. They're requesting a ceasefire." The bridge crew froze. In all recorded history, the Archons had never halted an engagement once it began. Their protocols didn't allow for it. "Put them through," Sarah ordered. The crystalline face that appeared on their screen was different from before. A higher-ranking commander, its faceted eyes showing something that looked almost like fear. "You have violated all known combat protocols," the Archon stated. "Your tactics follow no recognizable patterns. Your technology evolves during battle. This is not permitted." Sarah leaned forward in her chair. "That's exactly the point. Evolution doesn't ask permission. It doesn't follow protocols. It adapts. It changes. It survives. Perhaps it's time for your collective to remember that." The Archon's response would shape the next phase of the battle, and perhaps the future of both species. The question was, could a civilization built on perfect, unchanging order learn to accept the power of chaos and change? The silence on the Shadow Dancer's bridge was broken only by the soft hum of quantum systems adapting, evolving, learning. Through their view screen, the Archon fleet hung motionless in space, their crystalline vessels reflecting starlight like frozen fractals. "They're arguing among themselves," Rodriguez reported, monitoring the surge of communications between Archon ships. "Their command structure is fragmenting. Some want to continue the attack following standard protocols. Others," she paused, surprise evident in her voice, "others are advocating for studying our tactics." Sarah watched the tactical display, noting how the perfect formation of the Archon fleet had begun to show subtle imperfections. Ships drifted slightly out of alignment. Response times varied by microseconds. Tiny flaws that would have been unthinkable hours ago. "Their entire civilization is built on the idea of perfection," Kai said, his fingers dancing across engineering controls as he fine-tuned their hybrid weapons. "Imagine believing for millennia that you've achieved the pinnacle of evolution, only to discover you've actually trapped yourself in a dead end." The main screen flickered as another transmission came through. This time, 3 different Archon commanders appeared, their crystalline features subtly different in ways the humans were just beginning to recognize. "Your species presents an impossibility," the central figure stated, its multifaceted eyes pulsing with confused energy. "Our records show that adaptive evolution should have ceased once optimal efficiency was achieved. Yet you continue to change, to grow stronger through imperfection." "That's because perfection is stagnation," Sarah replied, standing from her command chair. "The moment you think you've achieved it, you've actually started to die." The Archon on the left shifted, its crystalline form catching the light differently. "The human vessel's capabilities have increased by 47% since our engagement began. This rate of advancement defies all known parameters." "Because we're not trying to be perfect," Sarah explained. "We're trying to survive. And survival means adaptation, means embracing chaos and uncertainty as tools rather than flaws." The bridge crew watched as the Archons processed this, their rigid minds struggling with concepts that challenged millennia of certainty. In the background, their fleet continued to show signs of disorder, ships moving in increasingly unpredictable patterns. "Alert," Park called out suddenly. "New energy signatures, massive ones." The tactical display lit up as space itself seemed to tear open. Through the quantum rifts emerged 3 new Archon vessels, each one dwarfing the previous fleet. Their crystalline hulls were darker, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. "The Eternal Guard," the Central Archon announced, its voice carrying a note of what might have been fear. "They maintain the purity of our protocols. They do not permit deviation." Sarah's tactical mind raced as she studied the new arrivals. These ships represented the Archon's response to internal disorder, living weapons designed to enforce their perfect, unchanging order. "All hands to battle stations," she ordered calmly. "Kai, how's our dimensional drive?" "Better than ever," the engineer replied with a grim smile. "The quantum mimicry system has been analyzing the Archon's rifts. We might be able to create our own now." Rodriguez's console lit up with new data. "Captain, the original fleet. They're sending us tactical data about the Eternal Guard. Their weapon frequencies, shield rotations, blind spots, everything." Sarah nodded slowly, understanding the significance. Part of the Archon fleet had chosen evolution over stagnation, chosen to break their own rules rather than enforce them. "The Eternal Guard will consider this treason," one of the Archon commanders warned. "They will destroy us all to maintain the purity of the protocols." "Then let's give them something new to think about," Sarah replied. "Kai, prepare the quantum rifts. Park, plot firing solutions using the tactical data. Rodriguez, start analyzing their energy signatures. It's time to show the guardians of perfect order what controlled chaos can do." The massive ships of the Eternal Guard moved forward with inexorable purpose, their weapons charging with enough power to reshape solar systems. But Sarah saw something they didn't: the subtle flaws in their perfect formation, the rigid patterns in their attack protocols. They were the ultimate expression of the Archon's pursuit of perfection, which meant they were also the most vulnerable to unexpected change. "All crews, prepare for dimensional combat," she announced. "Let's teach them why evolution never stops, why perfection is the enemy of survival, and why humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to embrace the chaos of change." The battle that followed would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of the Archon collective itself, a civilization forced to confront the possibility that their greatest achievement had become their greatest weakness. The void between Mars and Earth erupted with impossible energies as the Shadow Dancer danced between dimensions, leading the Eternal Guard on a chase through realities they had never imagined possible. Behind them, the rebellious Archon ships provided covering fire, their crystalline weapons now modified with human-inspired unpredictability. "Quantum rift signatures are stable," Kai reported, his voice steady despite the strain of maintaining their dimensional shifts. "The mimicry system has fully integrated their space-folding technology. We can match their jumps and add a few tricks of our own." Sarah watched as the massive Eternal Guard vessels tried to trap them in a 3-dimensional cage of overwhelming firepower. But the Shadow Dancer wasn't limited to 3 dimensions anymore. Their hybrid technology allowed them to slip between the cracks in reality itself. "Their attack patterns are pure crystallized thought," Rodriguez observed, studying the tactical data. "Beautiful, perfect, and completely predictable. They can't even conceive of attacking from a random vector." "Then that's exactly what we'll do," Sarah decided. "Kai, prepare for Protocol Chaos Prime. All hands, brace for dimensional acceleration." The Shadow Dancer's quantum hull hummed with accumulated knowledge, generations of evolution compressed into hours of combat. They had learned from every exchange, adapted to every attack, and now they were about to attempt something that violated the fundamental laws of physics as the Archons understood them. The ship split its quantum signature across multiple dimensions simultaneously, appearing to be in dozens of places at once. But unlike their earlier ghost images, each version was real. The same ship existing in parallel spaces, synchronized through the quantum mimicry system's impossible calculations. The Eternal Guard's perfect formations faltered for the first time in their existence. Their targeting systems, designed for absolute precision, couldn't handle a threat that existed in multiple probabilistic states simultaneously. "They're trying to adapt," Park called out, watching the enemy's response. "But their adaptations are still following patterns, still trying to achieve perfection rather than embracing chaos." Sarah nodded grimly. "That's their weakness. They see chaos as a flaw to be eliminated rather than a tool to be used. Show them what controlled chaos can do. Execute attack pattern evolution." The Shadow Dancer's multiple quantum states converged on the Eternal Guard from every possible angle, each version firing hybrid weapons that phased between dimensions. The massive crystalline ships found their perfect defenses useless against attacks that literally broke the rules of reality. "Their shields are failing," Rodriguez reported with mounting excitement. "The quantum feedback is causing cascade failures in their crystalline structure. They can't maintain perfect order anymore." The largest of the Eternal Guard vessels, a behemoth of living crystal that dwarfed cities, turned its main weapon array toward Earth. If they couldn't maintain order, they would eliminate the source of chaos. "Not happening," Sarah stated flatly. "Kai, full power to the quantum drive. Let's show them what humanity's gift for improvisation can really do." The Shadow Dancer's hull began to glow with accumulated energy, their quantum mimicry system combining Archean crystal technology with human adaptability in ways that should have been impossible. They had evolved beyond simply copying their enemies' weapons. They had learned to improve them. "Multiple quantum signatures converging," Kai announced, his hands flying over his console. "We're about to attempt something that's either brilliant or suicidal." "Probably both," Sarah agreed with a tight smile. "That's humanity's specialty." The Shadow Dancer launched itself directly at the Eternal Guard flagship, its quantum state fluctuating between dimensions so rapidly that it appeared to phase in and out of existence. The massive crystalline vessel fired its planet-killer weapon. And the humans did something that violated every protocol in the Archon's database. Instead of dodging or defending, they absorbed the energy directly into their quantum hull, letting their adaptive systems evolve in real time to handle powers that should have annihilated them instantly. "Hull integrity at 300% and rising," Rodriguez reported in disbelief. "The quantum mimicry system isn't just handling the energy, it's using it to fuel further evolution. We're becoming something new." The Shadow Dancer emerged from the energy beam transformed, its hull now a perfect fusion of crystalline order and quantum chaos. They had evolved beyond both human and Archean limitations, becoming something that neither species had imagined possible. As the Eternal Guard's weapon finally died, silence fell across all dimensions. The transformed Shadow Dancer hung in space, a living testament to the power of adaptive evolution over rigid perfection. "Message from the Archean Collective," Park announced quietly. "All ships. They're requesting to learn." Sarah stood from her command chair, looking at the fleet of crystalline ships that had spent millennia pursuing perfect, unchanging order. "Send them our response. Lesson 1. Perfection isn't a destination. It's the journey of constant evolution. Would you like to evolve with us?" The answer that came back would reshape the galaxy. For the first time in their ancient history, the Archons chose to embrace change, to accept that true strength comes not from achieving perfection, but from never stopping the endless dance of evolution. And humanity, represented by a single ship that had dared to break every rule in existence, had shown them the way.